Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Tony Yoka has weighed in at a career-high 251 pounds for his fight with Carlos Takam. This fight is taking place in France, an all-French affair, with Takam, who originally was by way of Cameroon, being a French citizen for a number of years. It's not quite a passing of the torch fight, because that should have happened a few years ago. Takam in his 40s now is past prime, but he's still a known commodity. Solid, durable, and as he most recently proved against Arslanbek Makhmudov, he's still a handful. And if you give him opportunities, he will let his hands go and he will take those opportunities. Jerry Forrest found that out a couple of years ago. Takam is still a guy that's around top 20 to top 30, somewhere there or thereabouts, despite his advancing years. He's still durable, he's not completely washed, he's got something to offer, and we've got questions about Tony Yoka. Seriously, Tony Yoka against Martin Bakole, which was almost a year ago, that was his first career loss. That was a disaster for Tony Yoka, both physically and also mentally. He was beaten up by Bakole. He was dropped heavy in that one. He looked like he was going to be taken out, but he got on his bike. He basically kept out of harm's way against Martin Bakole and phoned in the last few rounds of that fight. He wanted to survive. He didn't try to engage and take risks. He didn't let it all loose in those final rounds. Martin Bakole was a dominant fighter in that performance, although the scorecards shockingly did not reflect that. One judge disgracefully had it a draw, and the others were closer than it should have been. Arguably, Tony Yoka, you could give him 1 or 2 rounds max, maybe not even that. So you've got a guy who was just beaten pillar to post in that fight by Bakole. He took his aggression away, and Yoka, where's he at mentally? Because you've got Carlos Takam, he is no easy beat. Despite, obviously, the advancing years and diminishing returns and being past prime, Tony Yoka could have all he can handle in this fight. And what if Carlos Takam sees off some of the early aggression, some of the machismo, some of the bravado that Tony Yoka likes to show? Clearly, Yoka is an on-top fighter. He takes confidence from being in control, dominating and dictating the fight. And when it's not going his way, he doesn't handle it well, as seen in the Bakole fight. So we could end up have Carlos Takam sticking around, hanging around, and then starting to have success as the fight wears on. It's going to be really interesting to see the strategy, because if I was predicting, basically coming off that loss, you've got a smaller fighter in Carlos Takam, that Tony Yoka will probably be a little bit safety first, be a bit more cautious. He took a beating in that fight with Martin Bakole. He probably wants to maximize his 6'7" frame, 82-inch reach, although Carlos Takam, 6'1", he's got a pretty long reach for a size of about 80 inches. So it is a case that Carlos Takam could end up having success with his jab. And as we know, Carlos Takam likes to get to the inside. He's able to get some good work away, but he doesn't quite have those heavy hands that Martin Bakole has. But if he's able to put it on Yoka, how will Yoka respond? Will there be a little bit of PTSD from the Bakole fight? If it starts to get tough, is he going to crumble? This is a redemption type fight for Yoka. And if he loses, then a lot of people will be saying, how far can he really go? Is he a guy that's been more hype than substance? I mean, you look at the record. I mean, I know some people like to criticize Tony Yoka, have jokes about him, call him Tony Mediocre, but out of the prospects of his sort of vintage, around that 2016 to 2018, he's fought a lot of decent guys on the way up, but Martin Bakole was just a step too far. So maybe that was just one step too far. Maybe he needed to have some more intermediary steps. But the thing is, if you're fighting in France and you're campaigning there, you're going to have limited options. And he took on a guy that they clearly underestimated, that they clearly weren't prepared for in terms of the power, and that ultimately he couldn't match it with. Carlos Takam's a much more known commodity. These guys are known to each other. They've been friends. It was once said that these two wouldn't fight each other because of their friendship. Clearly, that's out the window. This is probably some sort of sail off into the sunset type payday for Takam. But he's not going to roll over and just go, here you go, Tony Yoka. His record may be, 39-7 or whatever it is at this point. But Carlos Takam will always bring it, as evidenced by the fight with Makhmudov, where he was hurt early. But what he did was he saw off the onslaught and he built into the fight. Arguably, that fight was, split sort of 5-5, 6-4, and then you minus the knockdowns to give Makhmudov the win. Takam was certainly in that fight, and I'm sure that there was a few blushes from the Makhmudov camp at how competitive he was. Is this going to be a similar case where Yoka may underestimate him? And look at the shape, career heaviest. What impact does that have? Tony Yoka has gone 10 rounds a number of times, but you have a case that he's never been this heavy. An extra 7 pounds on top of his previous career high. What impact is that going to have if the fight goes into the second half? We have to ask these questions. Has he trained hard enough for this one? Or is it a case that deliberately they've decided to come in a bit heavier? He is 6'7" after all. And I'm not saying at 251, I mean, you can see here, he's not out of shape. But this is different. Does he have the stamina for it? That's a question. Carlos Takam, we know, can do the rounds. He will work within himself, but he will take opportunities if they present themselves. And with Yoka coming into this one after the performance against Bakole, there's quite a bit for him to prove. Is he going to be willing to take risks? Will he be in his shell? What happens if Carlos Takam starts to have success? How will Yoka respond? But even if Tony Yoka goes in there and gets a stoppage at whatever point in the fight, or if he gets a decision, which I think if it goes the distance, judging by some of the recent judging that has been for Yoka fights, that Bakole one in particular, he'll get the decision, he'll get the win. But people will probably not give him full credit for whatever performance he puts in, no matter how good, because of Takam's age. They'll go, this guy was past prime in his 40s. So, it's a payday for Takam, but it's limited credit no matter what happens for Yoka. And we don't really know where he's at until he sort of steps back up to a Bakole type of fighter. If Carlos Takam had similar power to Martin Bakole, I may not be favouring Tony Yoka. I think he should be the favourite, but this is not a given. I think Tony Yoka probably gets the win, but don't be shocked if Carlos Takam is far more competitive than people think he should be. The Makhmudov fight proved that as well. There's still something left. How much left? Anyone's question. He's, Father Time is winning day by day. He's not, in his early to mid-30s. He's actually in his early to mid-40s now. But interested all the same, and I would note I will not be able to do a post-fight review immediately after the fight. I'm traveling for some family events, but I will maybe within 12 hours of the fight be able to do something. But what do you make of this fight? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.